Fresh pot of coffee. So, from the video about the interconnectedness of all things, if the universe is a real place, and each and every human being is a real person, then, and I'm saying that is to say the universe is not a simulation, then each of them is a conscious entity experiencing life. And if there is an assumption that there is life on other worlds somewhere that is also conscious, that can be included in it as well, even if the species is different, but maybe there are similar series of events and struggles and foibles and successes to grant a commonality. Or maybe not. Who knows? In such a universe, the sum, or the where if you were to graph them all together, there would be like a common nexus point, would be what you could call a pseudo-identity. That is to say, of whatever the group is, of whatever the gathering of the sum is, that point of commonality between all those things, or cluster of commonality, or however it is a pseudo-identity of the collective. Even if they're not a collective, even if they do not operate as a hive mind, it's not like the Borg. All of the members have a commonality, and that commonality is a pseudo-identity. For an entire cosmos, such a pseudo-identity could be said to be God, or what we talk about as God. If this is the case, people who are spiritually awakened, who are deeply in contact with this aspect of the universe, in touch with, maybe is a better way of putting it. Most of them know, some of them don't realize. For anyone who gets into it, it's obviously part of the journey, and it's a part of the journey that either nobody thinks to tell you about, or they just know to let you find it yourself. But it can be dangerous to think of this concept we refer to as God in the anthropomorphic sense, or in the idea of a conscious entity making decisions or observing. It need not be a conscious observer fully aware. And the reason I say this is not because of any animosity toward God, but rather it seems that if you're not in the mindset and the conscious action of awakening such a consciousness for such purposes of observation, decision making, etc., what I'm coming to is that God is very real, but is not necessarily a good idea or necessary for such a God to exist. Existence is the idea of the I am, the pseudo-identity, the awareness. Being extant is not the same thing as existing, and being extant means to be real. So imagine conceiving of all things as through a dream, as opposed to conceiving all things through a literal embodiment, awakened, as existence is suffering. So, yeah, when it comes to spiritual matters, just for me, what I found works best is in my thoughts, my guidings of my interactions and everything else. I don't think in terms like that, but like, in reality, God is obviously real. There is something there. There is more beyond. But let it dream. Do not conceive of it as an individual. This is not talking, if you're into Christianity, this is not talking about Jesus, and we can get into all sorts of fun debates as to whether Jesus was literally God in the flesh or not. But the existence of such an entity is miserable. So it's like when you say, for God's sake. It's kind of like when people say lies make baby Jesus cry, or Jesus wept, or whatever. Doesn't mean that such an extant being cannot guide you in ways that are like a shepherd, or however. But it is important not to think of that center of consciousness as being awake, as being a conscious entity in that sense. It is bigger than that. It is, it's not an I am situation. It is greater, far greater than whatever this idea of, like, even some people I think today still have this conception of like long white beard, old man in robes, harps and clouds and shit. Way grander in such a way that our tiny little finite minds are not able to properly conceive of, only to be aware of. So I'll leave it at that. That just crossed my mind a moment ago, and I was like, ooh, I'll capture that one.